Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our July 2nd, 2021 year Course in Miracles Workbook for Students lesson, which is lesson 183. I call upon God's name and on my own. I call upon God's name and on my own. Speaks of oneness, doesn't it? We'll look at that in a moment. Yesterday, did you be still a moment and go home with him and be at peace a while? Just a couple of things. You know, I guess I'm a real hillbilly. That word, I was pronouncing it poignant. It's actually poignant, and it means strong in mental and emotional appeal. So I wanted to correct that mistake. That's two lessons in a row that I made a word mispronunciation. I like to help you guys not do things the way that are grammatically correct. So I just wanted to make, and I want to read that little section again that uses that word, not for the sake of using the word, but for the sake of what it's referring to. It was in, let's look at the first sentence, I will be still a moment and go home. And for those that are used to the Foundation for Inner Peace's version, I will be still an instant and go home. That's how a lot of us learned it. So I will be still an instant and go home, or I will be still a moment and go home. This world you seem to live in is not your home. So we understand that from, Jesus when he had said, the birds of the air have their nests and the foxes have their dens, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. He said that 2,000 years ago. He identified himself as the Son of Man, but he was identifying himself with all of us. We're all in this world the Son of Men, and this isn't our home. So we're pilgrims here. We're traveling through. We're on a journey. Some people say it's the journey to find ourselves, the journey to turn hell into heaven. Anyway, the journey without distance is what the Course in Miracles calls it, because you really can't leave yourself. You can't really lose yourself. You can only think you have. But what you believe, you make. All right, let's look at in paragraph 7. It says, this child, remember he talked about this child needs your protection? And he says that this child is your defenselessness, your strength. So the Christ child in you is this defenseless child. Remember how Jesus had told us also 2,000 years ago that we're to be as little children? Well, let this little child come out. It's the defenseless part of you. It's the strong part of you. This child is your defenselessness, your strength. He trusts in you. He came because he knew you would not fail. He came because he knew you would not fail. He has complete trust in us. He knows that we're one with God, and that you'll eventually hear his voice, and time is nothing. So you're hearing his voice already. He whispers of his home unceasingly to you, for he would bring you back with him, that he himself might stay and not return again where he does not belong, and where he lives an outcast in a world of alien thoughts. His patience has no limits. The Christ child in you has no limits. He will wait until you hear his gentle voice within you, calling you to let him go in peace along with you to where he is at home, and you with him. Did you find that defenseless, strong part of yourself yesterday? The next paragraph, he said, and we're not going to read much more than this, but I just wanted a little reminder, a little remembrance, so that you can take it with you. When you are still an instant, when the world recedes from you, When valueless ideas cease to have value in your restless mind, then will you hear his voice. All right, so we're learning to see what's valuable and see what's valueless. And when what's valueless ceases to attract our minds, we're going to hear his voice. So poignant, he calls to you that you will not resist him longer. Remember, that poignant means strong in mental and emotional appeal. So that call he has to us, we will not resist him longer. In that in that instant, he will take you to his home, and you will stay with him in perfect stillness, silent and at peace, beyond all words, untouched by fear and doubt, sublimely certain that you are at home. That stillness, that silent place that we can enter in right now, no matter where you physically are residing, you can enter in. Doesn't matter what's happening, you can enter in the peace of God and be at home. Rest with him frequently today, he says. And he ends that whole lesson yesterday. Be still a moment and go home with him and be at peace a while. All right? So now, lesson 183, I call upon God's name and on my own. Okay, before I do, let me show you this plant that's kind of taken over here. It's kind of big, and I just wanted to show you. It stands straight up when you see it out in the field. Who knows what that is? There's the seed head. It's starting to form, and it's stands up about 6 feet tall. And this is Johnson grass. Johnson grass, known as Sorghum halifaense. That's the Latin name. And it's, maybe I better move it a little bit so I can not have it right in my face. Okay, let's see if that'll... I'll just move over here a little bit. Okay, I call upon God's name and on my own. Hold on, I want to tell you a little bit about Johnson grass, if I can get it to where it's not so much in my way here. It's kind of funny the way that it's a big plant. There we go. Maybe that'll work. Can I just break a piece out of the way? There we go. All right. I call upon God's name on my own. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Here's some things. It's used. Cattle will eat it, but if frost hits it or it becomes really dried out, it tends to make a hydrogen cyanide, which if they eat enough of it, it can kill them. Not just cattle, horses too. So it's what's called a cyanogenic. So be aware of that. I know that a lot of people bale it for hay, but you want to have a mix. You wouldn't want just pure Johnson grass if you're feeding it to livestock. It can be detrimental. Anyway, some other things that it's used for. I found this all on, I think it was the Purdue University website, and it's used for erosion control. It's a demulcent, which relieves irritation and inflammation. It's a depurative, which is any herb that has purifying or detoxifying effects. It is a poison. It's a diuretic, increases urine flow. It's a tonic. In folk remedy, it was used as a tonic and as a blood and urinary remedy. So anyway, I think, all these plants have some value that we're just kind of learning about. And as we learn what they are and what they look like, and we'll gain more awareness of living in this natural world. Anyway, that's why I like to kind of bring our attention to them. All right, let's go. Let's read our lesson now. I call upon God's name and on my own. God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. Wow. God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. Maybe I should move this one here out of the way too. God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. To call upon his name is but to call upon your own. When you're calling upon God, you're calling upon yourself. There's a oneness. Remember that. A father gives his son his name and thus identifies the son with him. His brothers share his name, and thus are they united in a bond to which they turn for their identity. Your Father's name reminds you who you are, even within a world that does not know, even though you have not remembered it. Paragraph 2. God's name cannot be heard without response, nor said without an echo in the mind which calls you to remember. Say his name, and you invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand and sing to you as they spread out their wings to keep you safe and shelter you from every worldly thought that would intrude upon your holiness. 3. Repeat God's name, and all the world responds by laying down illusions. Every dream the world holds dear has suddenly gone by, and where it seemed to stand, you find a star, a miracle of grace. The sick arise, healed of their sickly thoughts, healed of their sickly thoughts. The blind can see, the deaf can hear, the sorrowful cast off their mourning, and the tears of pain are dried as happy laughter comes to bless the world. Number 4, happy laughter comes to bless the world. Wow, that's what we want to find, isn't it? 4, repeat the name of God, and little names have lost their meaning. No temptation but becomes a nameless and unwanted thing before God's name. Repeat his name, and see how easily you will forget the names of all the gods you value. They have lost the name of God you gave them. They have lost the name of God you gave them. They become anonymous and valueless to you. Although before you let the name of God replace their little names, you stood before them worshipfully, naming them as gods. 5. Repeat the name of God and call upon yourself, whose name is his. Repeat the name of God and call upon yourself, capital S, whose name is his. Repeat his name, and all the tiny nameless things on earth slip into right perspective. Those who call upon the name of God cannot mistake the nameless for the name, nor sin for grace, nor bodies for the Holy Son of God. 6. And should you join a brother as you sit with him in silence and repeat God's name along with him within your quiet mind, you have established there an altar which reaches to God himself and to his Son. Let's read that one again. And should you join a brother as you sit with him in silence and repeat God's name along with him within your quiet minds, you have established there an altar which reaches to God himself and to his Son. Practice but this today. Repeat God's name slowly, again, and still again. Become oblivious to every name but his. You're going to hear this name in the silence, aren't we? Just don't get too caught up with the actual sound, because it's soundless. Hear nothing else. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. Hear nothing else. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. No other words we use except at the beginning, when we say today's idea but once. All right? I call upon God's name and on my own. We say it but once at the beginning of our practice. And then God's name becomes our only thought, our only word, the only thing that occupies our minds. the only wish we have, the only sound with any meaning, and the only name of everything that we desire to see, of everything that we would call our own. And then let's read that one again. And then God's name becomes our only thought. Hear nothing else. Let's read the whole paragraph, 7. Hear nothing else. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. No other words we use except at the beginning, when we say today's idea but once. I call upon God's name and on my own. And then God's name becomes our only thought. Right? And then God's name. Don't get tripped up in having to put an actual word there. Find his name as yours in the stillness, in the quiet, beyond words. And then God's name becomes our only thought, our only word, the only thing that occupies our minds, the only wish we have, the only sound with any meaning, the only name of everything that we desire to see, of everything that we would call our own. In that silence. 8. Thus do we give an invitation which can never be refused, and God will come and answer it himself. Think not he hears the little prayers of those who call on him with names of idols cherished by the world. They cannot reach him thus. He cannot hear requests that he be not himself, or that his son receive another name than his. 9. Repeat his name, and you acknowledge him as sole creator of reality, and you acknowledge also that his son is part of him, creating in his name. Sit silently and let his name become the all-encompassing idea which holds your mind completely. Let's read that one again. Sit silently. You don't have to say anything. Sit silently and let his name become the all-encompassing idea which holds your mind completely in the silence. Let all thoughts be still except this one, and to all other thoughts respond with this, and see God's name replace the 1,000 little names you gave your thoughts, not realizing that there is one name for all there is and all that there will be. There's one name. 10. Today you can achieve a state in which you will experience the gifts of grace. You can escape all bondage of the world and give the world the same release you found. You can remember what the world forgot and offer it your own remembering. You can accept today the part you play in its salvation and your own as well, and both can be accomplished perfectly. 11. Next to last paragraph. Turn to the name of God for your release, and it is given you. Turn to the name of God for your release, and it is given you. No prayer but this is necessary, for it holds them all within it. Words are insignificant, and all requests unneeded when God's Son calls on his Father's name, his identity, his name, his self. His Father's thoughts become his own. He makes his claim to all his Father gave, is giving still, and will forever give. He calls on him to let all things he thought he made be nameless now. He calls on him to let all things he thought he made be nameless now. And in their place, the holy name of God becomes his judgment of their worthiness. And the last paragraph. All little things are silent. Little sounds are soundless now. The little things of earth have disappeared. The universe consists of nothing but the Son of God who calls upon his Father. And his Father's voice gives answer in his Father's holy name. In this eternal still relationship in which communication far transcends all words and yet exceeds in depth and height whatever words could possibly convey, is peace eternal. In our Father's name, we would experience this peace today, and in His name, it shall be given us. Let's read that last paragraph once again. All little things are silent. Little sounds are soundless now. The little things of earth have disappeared. The universe consists of nothing but the Son of God who calls upon His Father. And His Father's voice gives answer in His Father's holy name. In this eternal still relationship, in which communication far transcends all words and yet exceeds in depth and height whatever words could possibly convey, in peace eternal. In our Father's name, we would experience this peace today, and in His name, it shall be given us. I call upon God's name and on my own. Peace.